And we are live on the live streaming service.
Wonderful. All right.
And
are we live on the broadcast?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, we are, Dan.
Well,
we're live everywhere.
We're live everywhere. That's perfect.
You have like a minute and a half.
Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first ever Fireside Chat as part of our American Council of Blind DC Leadership Conference. Our theme this year is fostering voice, choice, and community. And many of our panelists will know this individual, but this year we've dedicated our conference to Charlie Crawford, who was our second executive director of the American Council of Blind, who passed away earlier this year. And it's really in memory of all that Charlie stood for, the wonderful advocate that he was for our blind and visually impaired community. And I think Charlie would have a huge smile on his face tonight to see us all getting together to talk about our community that we love and so much. And it's a wonderful tribute to Charlie. So thank you all for being here. We've never tried a fireside chat like this before, and I'm excited that everybody really took time out of their very busy schedule to participate. I think I'd like to go around and just give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their organization. So you guys will correct me here if I'm wrong, but I think our oldest organization is the American Printing House for the Blind. So Craig, we'll let you go first.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. And I hope everyone is doing well. I know around the country, a lot of us are climbing out of the cold, but warmer days are ahead. So we're all excited about that. I'm Craig Meador, president of the American Printing House for the Blind. And for those, if perchance there's someone listening who doesn't know, the American Printing House is the oldest and the world's largest nonprofit production center for materials and educational apparatus for anyone who is blind or visually impaired. That's kind of what we do.
Well, great, Craig. Thank you for being here. Next, I think maybe American Foundation for the Blind. You all just celebrated your 100th anniversary.
Sure.
So welcome,
Dan,
Kirk.
thanks so much. It's Kirk Adams. I'm president and CEO of the American Foundation for the Blind, and we are in the midst of celebrating our 100th year. This is our centennial year, founded in 1921, and we are providing some really fantastic streamed events and conversations for our community in commemoration of our centennial. So if you go to afb.org/100, afb.org/100, our first stream centennial event is up, and our next one's coming March 4th. So everybody enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Kirk. And then I think NFB has BVA, but maybe a year or two. So Mark, please introduce the National Federation of the Blind.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. Mark Riccobono. I serve as president of the National Federation of the Blind. Pleased to be talking to you from our national headquarters in Baltimore, where I am actually next to a fireplace. I figured that was the best place to take it from. And as America's Civil Rights and Membership Organization of Blind People, happy to be here with this elite group of individuals who we're pleased to work with. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for being here. And next we'll hear from Don Overton from Blind and Veteran Association. So Don?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I represent the Blind and Veterans Association. We just celebrated our 75th anniversary as the only congressionally chartered veteran service organization representing blind and visually impaired veterans. So we look forward to this opportunity this evening. So thank you all.
Thank you, Don. And I think I'll go next with the American Council of Blind. This is our Jubilee anniversary this year. We will celebrate our 60th year. And so I am Dan Spoone, the president of the American Council of Blind, and it's our DC Leadership Conference here that we're participating in this weekend. And, we are, of course, one of also the largest and oldest consumer groups in the United States. And, glad to be here. Next, I think we're going to go to Mark Richert with AER.
Thanks so much, Dan, and what an honor to be part of this group. Thank you so much. I'm currently serving as the Interim Executive Director for the Association for Education and Rehabilitation of the Blind and Visually Impaired. AER is the professional membership association in our field, and while our official formation date was 1984, in a lot of ways was sort of a reformation. Our organization in some way, shape, or form has really been around for, well, easily a century and a quarter, if not longer. So I'm really proud to do it. And I'm coming up on my 1 year. My first day back in this interim capacity was March 2nd of last year. And that feels like about 1 month or 1 decade ago, depending on how we reflect on what's gone on in this last 12 months. So thank you so much.
Well, Mark, we won't ask you that difficult question. So if that request had come on April 2nd instead of March 2nd, would you have still had the
same? Yes and yes, but yes, we could not foresee. I don't think well, we'll talk about this in a minute, but I don't think any of us could have foreseen this. How wild and crazy things have been. So
no, what a year. And last but not least, I want to recognize Lee Nasehi with VisionServe Alliance. So Lee.
Thank you, Dan. And that's because I'm the youngest of this.
You're the kid. You're the kid. Yeah.
Yes, we are. I think we're just a little bit over 40 years old. VisionServe Alliance is also a nonprofit, and we're an association of private agencies across the country and one member in Canada, whose primary mission is service or products to people who are blind, have low vision, or other visual impairment. We've expanded our membership a little bit, and we have just shy of 130 organizational members and another 25 or so individual associate members.
Well, welcome, Lee. Thank you for being here this evening. And again, thanks to everybody for taking time out of a Sunday evening to join with us this evening. And I really wanted to go ahead and delve right in there and talk a little bit about what Mark kind of referenced earlier, which was 2020 and kind of the introduction of a pandemic, of social unrest, truly an assault on our capital before in January. So just an amazing set of events that we are dealing with right now. And I wanted to kind of maybe first turn it over to Kirk to talk a little bit about an initiative AFB got started, which and I know all the consumer groups in the blindness community supported. And that was really the project of running a survey and dealing with flattening the curve. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about the motivation from that and maybe some of the results that came out of the survey.
Sure, Dan. And first of all, gratitude to you and ACB for putting this together. Great to be here. And hi to everybody out there in ACB Radio Land.
And we should say aloha to you. So thank you.
Yeah.
We're all jealous.
I'm also grateful to be in a warm place today. So AFB is, most people probably know, we're a private nonprofit. We are not, although we're often confused for the council and the federation, we are not a membership organization. We have a board of trustees that we recruit from across the country. We're fairly small. We have 40 employees. We have a long history of research and public policy work, and kind of remaining true to our roots when COVID became obviously a real thing. We pretty quickly rallied a group of researchers, including a lot of volunteers from universities, and created a survey called the Flatten the Inaccessibility Curve. And thanks to everyone on this panel and others, there were 19 different for-profit and nonprofit organizations serving people who are blind who pushed that survey out. And so we received over 1,900 valid responses to a pretty lengthy survey, which is an outstanding sample size in our field. And not rocket science, but there were 6 areas. We did see confirmation of some things we know about employment. the folks who responded kind of by definition had some level of computer skills and some access to technology. And yet under 30% of the respondents of working age were employed. A large percentage felt they were underemployed. The percentages of people who had lost their job was greater than the general population, and people had lots of issues with technology. Other areas of concern were access to medical procedures like COVID testing and impacts on public transportation, paratransit, the cutbacks in transportation, things like that. Since then, we've done 2 surveys called Access and Engagement, focused on our blind kiddos, our K-12 blind kids, and how they're faring in this virtual learning environment. And Dan, we actually have 1 week left on, I think, what is going to be a very impactful study. We call it the workplace technology study for short. It's open for another week. We really want to understand what technologies blind people who are employed are using in the workplace, both assistive technologies, which job functions are being performed with assistive technology, which off-the-shelf technologies are proving to be persistent barriers to inclusion, which off-the-shelf technologies seem to work better. We're going to get a good baseline on use of technology in the workplace. We'll be able to refresh the study on occasion, and depending on what we learn, we'll be able to dig deeper into some of these areas and share the information with the field, with the technology industries, with policymakers, and again, try to keep leveling the playing field for all of us. So Workplace Technology Study, WTS, if you go to afb.org/WTS, it's a pretty long, detailed survey. The more respondents we get, the better the data is. Really would love help in being inclusive in this survey, not only race and gender, but educational levels, rural, urban. I looked at the data Friday, and about 65% of the respondents are college graduates, live in cities, but we want the big picture. So any help we can get in getting that survey in more hands and filled out in the next week, the better. So thank you.
Oh, that would be fantastic. And I think you've got 3 consumer groups here present today that could maybe help you with that. So Mark Riccobono, can you talk a little bit about your membership and connections and where you saw the greatest impacts due to the pandemic? And what that has driven you to do as an organization, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So, the 2 areas where we really heard from Federation members in terms of what we needed to do as COVID started to I guess, unfold, and as we started to understand it, going way back to March, which I agree with Mark Reichert. Depending on the day, it feels like a long time ago. But we really focused on 2 areas: connecting and protecting. So we knew in early March we issued a kind of a nationwide stay on all in-person meetings in our organization, and so we knew that community is at the heart of what we do, and so we immediately spun up kind of this network of virtual resources so that people could continue to connect. And the wonderful thing that really emerged and is true of what you typically see in our movement is, people really started to create events based on the local resources, the local expertise. And so we saw, I don't know, at its peak, I think we had 70, 80 different events outside of our regular chapter meetings. And then the second big thing that we really focused on was the protecting piece. And of course, that ranged everything from, pushing back on drive-up testing, because, at the beginning, seemed so long ago, that was the model in most places, was you had to drive up and Uber wasn't going to sit there with you. and your neighbor probably wasn't going to either. So we really started working with states through our grassroots network. And then, of course, working very heavily on voting. Also, as Kirk has already pointed out, I mean, the pandemic really enhanced stuff we already knew, right? We already knew how horrible the educational technology situation was. And that extended to so many other areas, including testing. So we worked very closely with some blind students who started to emerge in social media to get the College Board to actually produce Braille for their AP tests. They were basically just going to leave blind students behind. So connecting and protecting was really our focus. Obviously, the circumstances of the pandemic really challenged us to think about how we could craft the business of the organization and continue to do what we do. And everybody has faced that same challenge, right? So from our national convention where, we registered over 7,200 people, which really even blew out our expectations for what going virtual would do, to, just having completed our Washington Seminar Week just about 10 days ago, figuring out how to deliver our advocacy message to Capitol Hill consistently in a virtual format. So the beauty is that it's really given us an opportunity to leverage the ingenuity that blind people have, the problem-solving skills, to really continue to push forward our core activities. And it's allowed us also to really leverage the talents of so many members, right? Whether it's teaching origami using description or all sorts of stuff. It's hard to remember now.
Yep.
But that's, I think, part of what has made it exciting, even though obviously socially distanced and being apart's really hard. But just to see the way people have connected with people, finding blind people who needed help, who weren't connected to any sort of network, and having our members who, organized money to get people groceries or rides or just so many great stories. And I think one of the things that has happened is that's a positive out of the pandemic is it has helped a lot of blind people who were not connected to these networks get connected. There's still a lot who aren't, but I think it's helped a lot of people get connected, and that's been a really great thing.
I completely agree with you. I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but we really, we experienced the exact same phenomenon inside of ACB. It just really became a place where we provided the structure for people to connect and network and socialize and really feel a void of people feeling isolated and alone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I wanted to turn to Dawn, and from the BVA's standpoint, how did your consumers deal with the pandemic?
And we'd probably echo the similar sentiments. It was a unique experience for us, first and foremost, contending with a federal agency the size of the Department of Veterans Affairs, which plays such an integral role in the lives of our members. And when they began to shutter, first the blind rehabilitation centers and then the VA medical centers themselves, having to adjust and become really good partners with the federal agency to look at the best way forward. I think we did a lot of the same things. We turned to technology. We embraced technology. We were able to look at everything from exercise and physiology approaches with individuals virtually to make sure folks were still continuing to get up and move. But the continued concerns around individuals being able to access care. Fortunately, the Department of Veterans Affairs heavily invested in telehealth, but with that came the same challenges that I think many of you experienced. We have that unique generational shift in our organization right now with our World War II, Korean War, and now the aging Vietnam veteran population, and some challenges around technology. Making sure that we were deploying the technology, that folks were getting the critical training that they needed so that they could maximize those opportunities. And then it really afforded us as an organization. It was a unique opportunity for us at our 75th anniversary when we shifted away from an in-person convention and we really went to just virtual learning opportunities and engagement, but to really do that introspective of the organization and look at what is the next 75 years of BVA going to look like, and really beginning to craft that and spending a significant amount of time on internal operations, beginning those transitions to both digital and more tech-based. Our advocacy with Congress was interesting. We were able to deploy some wonderful grassroots advocacy tools that drove several key pieces of legislation for us. It was interesting for us as an organization, 3 major victories in the 116th Congress versus a lot of our sister organizations in the military and veteran battle space that were challenged and didn't make the same investments and I don't think deployments of that technology as effectively. So it was a unique opportunity for us. I think we've come out much better for it, and we look forward to continuing to fine tune what we're utilizing right now.
Thank you, Don. And I think we, in some ways, as consumer groups of blind and visually impaired, we're almost better positioned a little bit for the pandemic in that we are normally used to transportation challenges and opportunities for folks to get together, right? And so I found early on in the pandemic, a lot of our members were actually the ones leading, free conference call chats with their friends and neighbors or their coffee group or their work colleagues, or we were kind of, in many cases, the first adopters with the Zoom platform. And so I think that has been an area where our community has been in a leadership role. And it sounds like Don and Mark, you all kind of experienced the same thing.
Absolutely. I would have to agree.
Yeah. Well, as part of what Kirk shared, not only talking about the work environment and transportation, but he also mentioned education and rehabilitation. So I'd like to now turn to Lee and Craig and Mark, and maybe start with Craig of, what did you all see, from an educational standpoint associated with the pandemic? How did it impact APH?
Sure. It's, first thing I will say, and I've said it before, and I know I've heard all of you echo this in your conferences, but we are a scrappy lot.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Where you see other education agencies that were, I think, for lack of a better term, stymied or paralyzed in the early days of COVID. Our field did not. Our field, we just started connecting with each other, agency to agency, group to group, trying to fill holes, trying to find out what's available, what we can do for students and for our adults. And that was the thing that probably blew, you know that about our field. We've been in this field a long time. We know that about the people who do the work that we do. But it was, once again, it was just that, it just filled the heart, and you're like, yeah, I'm in the right spot working with the right group of people, because I didn't see anybody freak out. I saw everybody come to the table with resources, and everybody's, it was just, it was an old-fashioned barn building, to put it in Amish terms. I'm not Amish, but I don't know why I thought of Amish terms, but there we go.
It fits, I think, yeah.
Okay. So that was the cool thing about all this. But education-wise, we had to shutter for a little bit on our production floor, and of course, schools shut down. Just that massive thing. And one thing I learned early on in life, and learned in many, being a school principal, and is you never waste a good crisis. So we had in our plan at APH, a part of our strategic plan 2 years ago, we set up this idea that we wanted to do a better job of serving the community. We provide them with a lot of products, a lot of really good products, but we were kind of short on the service and follow through. And so we really wanted to beef that up. So we began building this digital platform, which was going to launch in April of 2021, called The Hive. And as soon as this happened and the groups came together, Charlotte Cushman at Perkins, Cheryl Kamehameha at University of California, Los Angeles, reached out to our team and said, we've got some things we'd like to put online right away to get students, keep students engaged in learning. So we formed this triad partnership, and then we gathered more and more, I say we, and that's the collective we, the field we, not just APH, but more and more partners came in. And by the time we got through and back to the beginning of the school year, when I had to report out to the board and the Department of Ed this year, looking from February of last year, March, when everything really took off, to December of this year, we delivered, and this is just trainings for professionals and adults and some students, over 93 webinars. So 93 webinars, the average attendance was 95. Our largest attendance was over 1,000 people. 46 countries outside of the United States participated. 46 countries. That was just one thing it told you, that this field, this community, the world was impacted by this, and our field is bigger than just the United States. And so it was like a great kumbaya moment. And then we've been able to carry that on with the ongoing Excel Academy. We started the Excel Academy as a response to that. The Hive, we talked about that. That got fully launched. So all of these things that were in the future and responding to a crisis, we were able to launch ahead of time. And then it was just playing catch up and learning as we go, making mistakes. And what a great time to make a mistake is during the middle of a pandemic and a crisis, because everyone is very forgiving. So we took our bumps and bruises along the way, but I feel as a field and as APH, we've come out of this much stronger. We are positioned. We are further ahead than we expected to be at this point. I think the field is stronger. When I speak to my staff, the two big benefits I think that came out of COVID is, one is everyone became tech savvy. And, you know, it's one thing to be a 160-year-old nonprofit, 160-plus-year-old nonprofit company. And what comes with a 160-year-old nonprofit company, though, too, is sometimes a lot of organic structure that grows over time and a reluctance to change. Well, we had no choice but to change. COVID forced everybody out of silos, made them change, made them adapt, made them adopt. We still have over 2/3 of our entire team. We have 315 people. So roughly 200 of those individuals continue to work from at-home offices. And that's probably going to be the future of a lot of what we do, which was part of our strategic goal too, is because we want to find brilliance, which is everywhere. It's not just in, believe it or not, it's not just in Louisville, Kentucky.
And I was going to, so with that idea of technology, then that now allows you to recruit nationally, right? It doesn't require everybody to relocate geographically.
No.
So what has that meant for your talent pool?
It has it's been wonderful. I will say in a nutshell, it's been wonderful because we've seen that with several positions that we've been posting lately. We have people from East Coast to West Coast and everywhere in between, because I mean, we've changed our business model. We've changed our instructional model, and that has opened the doors to a lot of people that, I mean, we're all, I'm on that tail end of the last part of the boomers and part of that, what is that, Gen X, I don't know what it is. Not quite old enough.
Generation X, right? I think that's after the boomers. Yeah.
I think a lot of us are in the same boat where we're dealing with aging parents. We're dealing with some additional family situations. And there's a lot of people impacted by that they can't leave their corner of the world to come work for a wonderful agency. So by changing our mindset and using technology and experiencing this growth piece at APH, we feel comfortable with that now. Whereas 9 months ago, a year ago. I would say a lot of, even though we really encouraged that, a lot of our managers and supervisors didn't feel comfortable managing from a distance. Well, now they are experts at how to manage staff from a distance. So that no longer is a scary thing. And so, and I know it sounds funny. I'm looking at all your faces there. And NFB and AFB and VisionServe has done this forever. Staff all over the country.
Right.
This was new ground for APH. APH pretty much was, if you're going to work here, you're going to live in Louisville. And so we've grown up. We have joined the 21st century in that way. So it feels good to be one of the cool kids now.
I've got a smile on my face. That's great to hear. And Mark Richert, next I want to hear from you with, what has this meant for our teachers and rehabilitation folks with the COVID? How has it impacted education?
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. Sometimes, Dan, you and I get choked up at exactly the same moments. Yeah. I think that shows that we're both sentimentalists or something. And I will say that the reason why I bring that up is because, especially in those first couple of months last year, to get calls or emails from teachers, whether they called me or not, just to be part of the conversation, to hear. There's real pain and fear out there, not only about, holy mackerel, how am I going to do my job? And frankly, I'm also frightened, as everyone is, stressed out and all the rest. But what about, the kids I care about? What about my clients? What am I going to do? And that just fear and anxiety was just so palpable and real. And I think, we all experience that to one degree or another, but, where, AER fits into this puzzle because we're constantly interacting with the professionals who then say to their, let's just be frank about it, a very modestly sized, modestly resourced professional association, I'm frightened. How can you help me? That's a really tough position to be in. And so as we tried to, start to respond to that, it's certainly one of the first things that we had to do. And of course, Dan, we know all too well, all of us do. We had to wrestle with, are we going to do a conference this summer in person? Are we not? What's going to happen? I mean, that biennial international conference that AER puts together is, arguably the once every 2 years family reunion for certainly the professional, community, but well beyond that, for sure. And then we had to say goodbye to that. So that, has inherent value, but then from, in the little seat where I sit, you say, oh my gosh, we are foregoing the largest and arguably the singular most important fundraising activity that keeps the organization arguably afloat. And holy mackerel! So if you weren't frightened before for legitimate reasons, you are now when you see that. So I love Craig, your comment, sort of interpolating Rahm Emanuel and his "Don't let every crisis go to waste." I mean, I think there's a kernel of truth in that, which is that maybe those tough times inspire you or light a fire under you to do things that you should have been doing for a while, but you're lazy, you're complacent, you don't know the answers, and so then all of a sudden you're forced into doing it. So what did we do? A number of things, but the one that I think I'm particularly most proud of, I want to flag tonight, is our launch most recently of our own continuing education platform, which we have styled aerelearning.org. And, small at first here. It's just been out for about 18 days, I think. Not that I'm counting or anything. But again, to wink at Craig, we started to, prepare for this by trying to get off the dime by putting continuing education live events together last August and September. And so a lot of that stuff has populated this new little e-learning portal of ours that we hope to grow into something bigger. And I want to publicly thank Craig and your team. 12 of the 60 some odd now sessions that are part of that continuing platform that we have, AER e-learning, are because of a partnership, a very generous partnership with you. And it's just another example of how, collaboration, partnership, I've said this in multiple contexts, Dan, as you well know, when the times are tough, you really know who your friends are. And so it's great to see that. But when you look at the numbers of people who are showing up to these things, I mean, I keep saying little AER because there are 3.5, full FTE staff at AER, and not a whole lot of it, not a very sizable budget, and yet we put out these, feeling our way webinars, and 100 and some people register for it, and there's not a lot of attrition, and 80 or 90 people actually attend the session. Who knew, right? And I think, that's a testimony among many things to how people are starving for connection, wanting to learn from each other. And if you put some, quality content out there and say, let's get together and talk about this, people really do genuinely show up. And so that's really exciting. The last thing, Dan, I guess I'll say for now, based on, given the question you put to me, and how the educators and the rehabbers doing, I think we, for all the things people have said already, right? We're getting more comfortable just as a group. We're getting more comfortable with technology. We've had the fires lit under all of us. So, some of our folk who are veteran folk who've been in the field who say, I'm fine doing things the way that I've been doing it, and have been doing it, frankly, quite well. Some of those folks have now, by necessity, have had to come along and start playing around with this Zoom and other things. I think we've gotten to a point now where it's not that COVID has worn off, far from it. Or the fear of it. It's that I think we've started to realize, what? COVID's really important, and it's critical that we talk about it, but we dare not lose sight of the fact that just because COVID has come along in the last 12 months, all of the same issues that we care about and have cared about for decades, and frankly, that are crying out for attention, for advocacy, and all that means, not just on Capitol Hill, but everywhere, all those same issues are still there. We still have issues of trying to put, competent personnel in connection with the students and clients that they need, just in terms of the numbers and who they are and the geographical issues, even with somewhat being liberated by the use of technology to close some of those gaps. I don't care if you're using Zoom and maximizing, keeping people working 24/7, you only have so many warm bodies, and people get tired, rightly so. So we've got to get to a point where we say, let's focus on COVID as we have been, but remember that those sort of perennial macro issues in our special education system, our voc rehab system, certainly, and for sure, and I am winking now, Lee, at you, because I'm sure you'll talk about this, trying to do something finally in a concerted way for folks who are older. These are long-standing issues that are still there. And somehow, while COVID gets all the attention, and maybe legitimately so, it's up to us to, as advocates, people who care, to remind all of us, and especially those who know nothing about our field, that these perennial issues are still there and we still need to address them.
Good. Thank you, Mark. I couldn't agree more. And next, I'm going to turn to Lee, who's envious of your 3.5 FTEs over there, Mark. And that is Lee with VisionServe Alliance. And Lee, you are kind of in a unique position that your membership, it consists of a lot of rehabilitation centers across the country, as well as National Industry of the Blind organization. So how has your membership dealt with the pandemic this year?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Well, I echo everything that's already been said, but then as a leadership collective, we'll turn to what the leaders of all of these private agencies, yourselves included, were thinking as this started to unfold. And, I remember most people thinking, well, this is just going to last a few months. And then as reality really set in, like, wow, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so initially we were genuinely concerned that many of our private agencies were going to go out of business, quite frankly. We were making decisions and dealing with the kinds of uncertainty that we've never dealt with before. There was no roadmap or blueprint for how to do that. And, making those kinds of decisions make your head hurt. Where do we go? How do I, first of all, as the leader of a private organization serving people who are blind, how do I protect them and make sure that they get the care that they need in these unusual circumstances? So that was dilemma number one. And like everyone has said, our field rose to the occasion, pivoted, innovated, and frankly, I think, thank God, and it's about time, and let's continue moving forward, because some of these things I wish we had done many decades ago, but it's okay. We're there. We're moving forward. I don't think we're turning back. But then beyond that, how do I take care of my staff? There are so many things happening with our leaders, our organization staff, their family members dealing with this pandemic. And, Ability One organizations, all of their workers were deemed essential workers. They never closed. I'm not sure everybody knows that. Their staff went to work every day, and their staff wore that as a badge of honor and produced incredible results. But there are many challenges in dealing with HR, as you can imagine, when you're still open, keeping everyone safe. And they did. And then finally, how do you take care of yourself, your fundraising, the economics? Many of our organizations are not well heeled. They depend on public funding. They depend on fundraising. Some of them did very well this year in spite of everything. Fundraising, we saw donors be extremely generous, which was terrific. And in the end, yes, there were a few organizations that did close their doors, but very few. Most survived, and most are very excited about the future. But Dan, I think the thing that I'd like to remind us and everyone who's listening is that, we're fighting not just the physical pandemic, but a mental health pandemic.
Yep.
This has taken a toll on all of us. And so VisionServe is working with its leaders to try to make sure we take care of our leaders and nurture them, and that they have safe places and ways to take care of their staff so we can continue to move forward.
Lee, thank you so much for that good advice. And I know with the American Council of Blind, we had a conversation here just a week or two ago about work-life balance. And when everybody is so passionate and so driven, and when working remotely and working in a virtual environment, you could literally go at this almost 24/7. Witnessed by the fact that we're having a fireside chat on Sunday night at 7:30, right? So how do you kind of take that deep breath and realize that there is a balance between life and work? And I want to come back to you in a minute. But I really, I want to get to know all you guys better and gals, and I want all our listeners to get to know you better. So I want to kind of take you away from your day-to-day job, and many of us on this call are blind or visually impaired. So I want to start with Kirk and just say, Kirk, tell us a little bit about Kirk Adams. What, are you blind? Are you sighted? What's your background? What makes you tick? What are three things that Mark Riccobono doesn't know about Kirk Adams? So
I've known Mark Riccobono for a pretty long time. So hey, let's go Don Overton.
Okay, let's go Don Overton. So share a few stories with Don so he gets to know you better.
Yeah, I'm totally blind. I was born in the beautiful Pacific Northwest in Aberdeen, Washington. For you grunge fans, I was born in the same hospital as Kurt Cobain, a little before him.
Yeah.
I was born sighted. My retina's detached when I was 5 years old in kindergarten on the playground, actually. And I became went from a sighted kid to a blind kid in a quick hurry in a couple days. And my parents were very young at the time and didn't know a blind person at all and didn't have any advocacy skills. And they were told, your son cannot come back to this public school. He needs to go to the state school. So, they took that as correct. And they visited the Washington State School for the Blind. This was in the mid '60s and weren't thrilled with what they saw there. They were both teachers. So I know Craig and crew whipped WSSB into shape, but had a retinal surgeon in Oregon. They recommended the Oregon State School. They visited, they liked it. They quit their jobs, moved the family down to Silverton, Oregon, so I could be a day student at the Oregon State School. Learn how to read and write Braille, which I do daily, and travel with a cane and use an abacus and type on a typewriter. And then threw me into the deep end into public school in fourth grade, and went through public schools as the only blind student in school henceforth. And so learned a lot of good survival techniques and creative problem solving, and how to analyze and manage risk like blind people do. And got a degree, went to work. I'm married for 35 years, 2 grown kids who are outstanding contributing citizens. And what else can I say? I was in banking and finance. I had the privilege to be the CEO of the Lighthouse for the Blind in Seattle. I continued to go back to school. I've earned a master's in not-for-profit leadership and a doctorate in leadership and change. And was asked to join the AFB board, 8 years ago. Had the opportunity to put my name forward when my predecessor announced his retirement, and came on board. It'll be a year. May 1st is 5 years at AFB. And okay. We've done a lot. We've done a great strategic plan. We've reorganized. We've transitioned programs to other homes. We've closed lots of offices and went virtual pre-pandemic, which was looked like we knew what we were doing there. And just it's a privilege. We're in our 100th year. I'm the 6th president of AFB. I'm the 6th blind person to be in that role. The first was Robert Irwin, who was also born a blind guy who was also born in Washington State. So we've gone full circle in 100 years.
Well, I thank you for sharing. And who's your favorite sports team?
Well, I treasure my Seattle Seahawks, and I'm actually on the island of Maui, and that is where I saw the Seahawks defeat the Denver Broncos 40-8 in their only Super Bowl victory. So I got a Seahawks hat somewhere nearby at all times.
Great, fantastic. Don, we'd love to hear a little more about your story.
Sure, happy to share. So I was born in New England, actually up in Connecticut, just outside of New York City. Grew up as an athlete. I started off as a competitive swimmer in my very early years, transitioned into both lacrosse and football as well during high school. After high school, I joined the Army, went in through jump school, was stationed with the 82nd Airborne Division, saw combat both in Panama and then over during the first Gulf War, so Desert Shield and Desert Storm. I like to tell a lot of our post 9/11 veterans that I was one of the first test dummies for IEDs. So I did experience an improvised explosive device. So penetrating blast injuries, bilateral, had some other shrapnel injuries, lost part of my hand, other minor pieces along as a result of that. But great process through the medevac, coming back first through Longstuhl, Germany, and then eventually landing at Walter Reed Army Medical Center here in DC. Had a great team of surgeons from Hopkins that came up and pioneered some procedures. I was one of the first individuals to receive Maltino implants to help regulate the pressures, the ocular post-blast pressures that I was dealing with. Minor brain injury that I sustained as well. after my medical retirement, eventually from the military, went on, got my degrees in social work and psychology. I was more of a policy wonk, so I did my internship actually in a Senate office and ended up landing a position both first on the Senate side, and then I moved over to the House. Eventually I saw the light and I jumped over the dais and got into advocacy and got away from that end of the operations. And I've been in advocacy ever since, about 30 years. I've been an accredited claims representative, so I really wanted to understand the Department of Veterans Affairs inside and out and take care of veterans to the best of my ability. So I've always been engaged in the claims process at some levels, but I've served as executive director with a few organizations. I joined BVA just a little over a year ago. I came in to help them out with their government relations team with some of their transitions. When my predecessor stepped away, I was asked to fill the seat and eventually asked if I would take the organization forward. I'm still questioning it, back to doing, as you were saying earlier, the 24/7. It's no doubt we really and truly put our heart and soul into the things that we're trying to do. We've stayed open organizationally throughout, so our offices in Alexandria have remained open. We moved some staff remotely, those folks that we were either concerned about with pre-existing health conditions or just to help distance as well. But aside from that, I've worked across different sectors. I've been in the guide dog industry as well, so I understand that sector, and I've been advocating on behalf of the guide dog handler groups and just building out more and more of our programs and approaches from that. Avid sports fan, more on the baseball side. Obviously, growing up outside of New York, I've been a Yankees fan my whole life, so still follow the Mets. So, but just to counter that and the Yankees and all their success, I've been a Jets fan my entire life in football. So, yet to see some of the victories there, but it all works out well. And married, we're raising our last of 3 children who's still in the home. He's really well. So I'm a geo bachelor now. Actually just moved into a new place down here in Virginia over the weekend. We maintain our residence up in Connecticut, but my 17-year-old's in a dual enrollment IBM program. So he's earning both his high school diploma and associate's degree with software engineering, which will transition in with IBM upon completion of that. So I'm happy to take the time away so that he can stay focused on the program that he's in. And I'm a regular traveler of Amtrak up and down the Northeast corridor on weekends.
Very good. And I really loved your story, Don, until you said you were a Yankees fan.
I know
that hit me hard, but I understand you. You grew up. That makes sense. And what senator and representative did you work for?
So I worked for John Edwards initially. So I was on the Democratic side of the House, and then I moved over and worked for Walter Jones, who recently passed away on the other side of the aisle. So I was in North Carolina at the time. I had completed one of my degrees out of East Carolina University. So I transitioned first with Senator Edwards and then over with Walter.
Fantastic. Well, great to hear your story. Craig, what got you involved in the blindness biz?
Nobody would take me. No, I think I started out life not knowing what I was going to do, although I did a lot of camps when I was in high school as far as camp counselor. So I knew I was going to do something with students and became an educator. And in my mind was going to be the world's greatest elementary ed, and finished my degree from Western Oregon State University. And found out that nobody thought I was as great as I thought I was. And there really was no job. So around that time, I had a good friend at college who said, why don't you come work at the Oregon School for the Blind? This is a Kirk Adams and Craig Meador connection. So I went to work at the Oregon School for the Blind, and just immediately, I think you hate to say fell in love, but definitely found my calling. worked with a group of young men, all in that 12 to 18-year-old age. And I was in the dorm, so my main job was expanded core, and just had a great time. And you know, it was just one of these things, just everything from bus travel to trips to the malls to doing laundry. And Oregon School had a great staff that really had high expectations for their kids. And so it just became a question of, why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't we? What, you know, the expectation, we always had high expectations for kids, because it's like, well, you know, you can't see something, so what? Let's figure it out. Let's figure out how to make this work. And a lot of great instructors who gave me a lot of, showed me a lot of patience. And so then about that time, Portland State offered me a free master's degree, to which I said, because they needed one warm body in order to meet their federal quota. They needed 15 people in their cohort in order to be fully federally funded. And I said, well, you know, I'm going to be the world's greatest elementary ed teacher, so I will be your 15th member in your cohort, but I'm not going into this field as a teacher. As soon as my ship sails in, I'm off to regular ed. And I said, that's fine. Just show up, don't fall asleep in class, and get a C or better. So free masters, and the more I got into the science and the reading and the history and the, you know, the deeper you just get sucked in, you realize how big, and, you know, it's not to get overtly spiritual on everybody, but I really believe there are some jobs in life that are a calling. And I felt education, especially as it pertains to working with students who are blind or visually impaired, was one of those callings, and I was drawn to that. And so I got that degree, worked in Oregon, went to Washington State at the State School for the Blind, taught there many years, moved into administration because I wanted to see if I could move the school forward. Had a lot of fun doing that, then moved into a state director of outreach and statewide consultant for Washington State. And so, and, you know, before I knew it, almost 30 years had passed that quickly. You know, it's just like you're 30 years into your career, and that's been my entire professional career. And then APH came calling. So, you know, being in the Northwest, it's like, and anyone from Louisville, please do not take offense. But I was my dad worked for the federal government, so we moved around a lot. And I'd seen pretty much, other than New England, seen every section of the country. And when we arrived in Oregon in 1975, I knew I was home. I was never going to leave. But then I came, the opportunity, APH came calling, and my wife and I, for her big birthday, I won't say which one because that would be rude, but we took a 19-state road trip. And I remember coming back over, as you come back into the Portland area, you come right into the Columbia River Gorge, and it's just like heaven starts singing. It's beautiful, it's green, it's lush, there's waterfalls flowing with beautiful craft beer, and great Oregon and Washington wine. And you just go, and we just looked at each other and said, we could never live anywhere else. And fast forward 4 months later, and I get a call from Tuck Tinsley at APH. And my wife said, well, if you don't do it, will you ever regret it? And it's just like, yeah, I think I will. So threw my hat in the ring and came in to be vice president of products and services, which was a position Bob Brasher had held for many, many years. And so my thought was, we're coming to APH. I'm going to work there 3 years because Tuck was a fascinating individual. I had worked for an incredible person named Dr. Dean Stengham. And Dean was this great guy, but Dean was not a big risk taker. He was a risk taker, but everything was calculated. And he had it all planned out and worked his plan and was very successful. Tuck was a wild hair. effective leader, but a wild hair. And I thought, I got to learn from this guy. I know how to play it safe. I need to learn how to push boundaries. So I told my wife, well, we'll go here for 3 years. And then when Tuck retires, we'll reevaluate, and then we will, come back to the Northwest. So we were thinking 3 years. I kid you not, this was the truth. At 9 o'clock that morning, first day on the job, Tuck comes up to my office, says, "What are you doing at 10? Let's go get a cup of coffee." And I said, "Well, okay, Tuck." And he comes in 15 minutes later and he says, "Well, what are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I can clear my schedule. We can be free." He says, "Well, I want to talk to you." I said, "Okay." So he left, and then he came back like not more than 5 minutes later. He says, I will not use the same language Tuck used, but he said basically, "Oh, anyhow, I'm going to tell you something. I'm retiring in 3 months." And it was later that day, I kind of called my wife and I just said, "You're not going to believe this, but maybe we should stop packing." Because she was still back in Washington. I was now in Kentucky. But long story short, it's all worked out amazingly well. Kentucky is my second home. It's a wonderful place. I still miss my Northwest, and I'll get back there someday, but we've made this home. So I live here with my wife of 36 years. We have 3 grown children, one in the film industry, one in computers, and one in New York City, works the hospitality as a manager of one of those bougie hotels. And they are all doing well. My wife is an oncology nurse and works here in Kentucky with me. And I don't know, life is, I think when you step back, and not to beleaguer a story here for people who have probably lost interest and are turning channels now, but I think anyone who can step back and look at life and say, just feel fortunate to be where you are, is a pretty darn good feeling. And then I always worry, the only worry I have is some days someone's going to figure out I really don't know what I'm doing. Kind of battle with that imposter syndrome from time to time. It's just like, because you can't believe that you've been this fortunate to have such a good life and have life and a job that's can be very meaningful and very fulfilling. And, from time to time, you're just like, surely there's somebody out there sharper, brighter, who can do this job better than I can do. And it's just a matter of time before they come to the forefront. And so I don't know, man.
Well, we're all replaceable, but I have to ask you the $64,000 question now that you're in bluegrass country. So Louisville Cardinals or Kentucky Wildcats?
Oh my gosh, Oregon Ducks.
So do you stay neutral?
I do, because if you don't, it's really funny. The roots run so deep here in Kentucky. So it's you are bred that way to be a UK or UL fan. So the best thing you can do is just stay out of it. And if you're an outsider, remain an outsider. And keep your rooting interest in other areas. And get along with everybody.
Well, go Ducks. Okay. All right, Mark Richert, tell us your story, Mark Richert.
Oh boy, let's see. I was born a blind, upper middle class white Lutheran boy in Southern Florida, and was an only child, and everybody who knows me out there says, "Well, we knew that, even though you hadn't told us that before." But in any case, grew up, went to public schools. It's 1975. It's a place called Nova. It was the only place where it's one of those things before neighborhood school education was emphasized and mainstreaming and all that. Just right at the beginnings of 94, 142. And so all of the kiddos with disabilities, all of the, at least in Broward County, Florida, all the bilingual kiddos went there. As someone rather irreverently put it, every kook in creation went to the school that we went to, even though it was one of those magnet schools, and otherwise you had to take some sort of test to get in. That's where they sort of centralized all the education for kids who were different, frankly. And so what a beautiful experience it was, just to be around in an environment where you had just profound diversity. I'm not entirely sure, based on who I was born to, where I went, where we lived. I'm not sure if I would have had that exposure otherwise, if I weren't born blind. So what a gift. And then let's see, fast forward through to college, went to undergrad at Stetson University. And yes, that's Stetson as in the hats and the cologne. And I'm already anticipating, Dan, your question. You're going to quiz me about some sort of sports thing, which of course I'm not going to know anything about because I'm a capital N nerd. But I will just share with this group.
Mark, I lived in DeLand for 2 years, so home of the Mad Hatters.
Well, and that's my point, and that's what's so hilarious, right? Maybe this, frankly, has totally soured me on sports, because the truth is, Stetson, it does not have a reputation for having a fierce team, and the truth is, it's not really their fault, because they are cursed with. I mean, can you imagine when you're sitting in the stands and the battle cry is "Go Hats"? Right? I mean, there is no way anyone. I mean, that does not inspire fear in the heart of the enemy, right? I mean, it is not. It's not enough. Anyway, you get the point. So after that, let's see. I got out of college in 3 years because I'm a nerd. And what else do you do when you're a nerd? And then when you're 19, 20 years old, you think you know everything, and of course you know less than nothing. So, of course, when you're in that position, you say, well, wait a minute, let's go off. Let's got to do something else. Let's go off to law school. Why not? Because, I mean, after all, law school is just, it's like Maui, right? It's where, Kirk is hanging out right now. It's not hard work. It's not, especially if you think you're a brain. So anyway, I went off to George Washington University Law School in Washington, D.C., which I visited on a college trip. It was one of these, 1 week in New York at the UN and 2 weeks in Washington. And that was right at the 1989, transition into George H.W. Bush's presidency. So, we were there. We got to go to a couple of the inaugural balls. We got to go to the inauguration. I mean, this is a nerd's dream. It's actually a lot better than the experience Craig was talking about up there in Oregon. He doesn't understand what beauty is until you can have that kind of nerdy dream, standing in 29-degree weather, freezing, listening to George Bush give a speech. So in any case, but what did I didn't know what I was doing. I got out of law school. I did college and law school in 5.5 years. Like I said, nerd. And when you're that young, your concept of what you think you want to do is, well, hey, people can't possibly live without me. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'll do these grand civil rights and First Amendment cases, every once in a while, maybe every few months or so, when the mood strikes, you just kind of wander down the street to the U.S. Supreme Court and you knock on the door, they let you in, you make your argument, and they say, thank God, Mark, you sorted it all out for us. Come back when you have other words of wisdom. And funny thing, it doesn't work like that. I'm being hyperbolic, but I think you get the point. I really, frankly, did not know. I knew that I wanted to do something that involved hopefully being of some use. But when you're that young, I'm not sure that you really have the practicalities, to sort that out. Fast forward again, thanks to dear friends like Scott Marshall. Maybe he's listening tonight, one of ACB's former staff. Critical staff person at the American Foundation for the Blind, now working at the Federal Communications Commission. He was the first person I met when I moved to Washington, D.C. Thanks, frankly, to an ACB connection, Judy Dixon, who many of you know. I'll just drop that name because she, too, was a Stetson alum, is a Stetson alum. And so was an ACB scholarship winner. She said, when you get to D.C., you should really get connected with Scott. So I did that. Thanks to that connection and others, I ended up working for Patricia Beatty. Pat Beatty, of course, played bunches of roles in ACB over the years. She worked at National Industries for the Blind. They asked me to come on as an intern. I was there for about a month, and then they offered me a job. And then fast forward, worked for a number of organizations in the field, including ACB for about 20 minutes in the mid 90s, 96, 97, something around there. But I will say that I've had the experience that I think few people have been blessed to have, which is I was working at American Foundation for the Blind and found out one day, oh, this organization called AER is looking for a new executive director. I was 30 years old, right? I didn't have any real executive experience at all to speak of. And yet, hopefully the AER board found something of use in me, but they were kind enough to ask me to come on. Learned a lot. I learned a lot. I'm winking at you now, Lee, because I'm sure you'll say more about this, I bet. But in those early 2000s, when I worked at AER for the first time, one of my sources of sort of continuing ed and professional development was the opportunity to meet with other of the CEOs like are on this call tonight, who, put their arm around me and said, let me tell you something, kid. Let me tell you how it really works. Or let me tell you how I screwed things up. Whatever you do, don't do, whatever the hell you do, don't do what I did. And so having that connection through what was a different named organization, but VisionServe Alliance was so useful. But after that experience at AER, Paul Schrader, name dropping again, who Craig has now seduced to come over to APH. He was I worked at AFB at the time. He said, we've reorganized things here. We'd love for you to come back and maybe be our new, we never had this position. Well, AFB had been working in public policy for ages, of course, but they never had a dedicated public policy director, nor did they have policy and research under sort of a, that bigger umbrella, which makes all the sense in the world to pair up those two things. How'd you like to maybe come back and do that work? Really? I mean, I left you guys. You want me to come back? That's really nice. And so we talked, and I ended up going there. Worked at AFB for many, many years, including for Mr. Kirk for a while. And then, life changes, your choices take you in different directions. Found myself in my own sort of life transitions, as did AER. I think AER, we've been pretty public about this. I think AER was kind of going through some transitioning long before COVID hit. And the AER folks reached out to me and said, you worked for us those many years ago. How'd you like to come back and help us through this transition? So, of course, after Dan, I got choked up and then said, of course, I'd love to help. It really has struck me since then. It really is true. I'm living proof of it. You can go home again. And I've gotten the chance to do that twice professionally. And it just means the world to me. Now, everyone listening on this session, of course, knows that in my non-day job role, I'm obviously very committed to our consumer movement. And so, of course, ACB means the world to me. And it was fabulous that ACB folks elected me to be our first vice president a couple of years ago. But needless to say, when Craig, when you talk about a calling, I can so relate to that. I've never, and frankly, sometimes you feel dragged into things, even if you get squirrely and squirmy and think you have a better plan. And frankly, often you don't. And life, the universe, good Lord, take your pick, or maybe all three, help you clarify what all that means. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there, Dan. Now, don't tease me about something about sports now. That's not fair.
Thank you, Mark. And now we know you're a Mad Hatter. It all kind of makes sense. So next, I want to hear from Lee Nasehi. So Lee, what brought you to the vision business, blind business?
My son did. So I'm a mom. I have a master's degree in social work administration and had worked in other aspects of human services. I started out in alcohol, drug abuse, and mental health, and then in early intervention services for children with all kinds of special needs. But Our son was born when I was only 25 weeks pregnant. He weighed 1 pound, 14 ounces, and he just turned 40. So 40 years ago, this was a pretty big deal. And he suffered retrolental fibroplasia. His retinas detached and they were not able to reattach them. He also is cognitively impaired and has cerebral palsy. So his birth was life-altering. And as I've shared with many people, while there were many scary moments and difficult things that we had to deal with, on behalf of our son, his struggle and his triumphs changed mine and my whole family's life for the good. I wouldn't know any of you were it not for our son, Joe. And I have many, many friends in this field and have learned so much. We have 3 younger children, and they also have been positively impacted by our son's life. So when we receive services in Florida, I live in very close to Dan in Central Florida, and we received services at a community-based organization that was called CITE, C-I-T-E. And Dan and Leslie were involved with that organization way back then. It changed our lives to be able to find some organization that truly understood the needs of our son. It was the first organization I found, frankly, that understood the needs of our son and helped us be the best parents we could be for him. So I was that mom that a lot of you teachers would see coming up the front door and say, "Oh my God, here she comes, run." I gave a lot of people a lot of crap. I was angry and confused, but mostly I cared about my son. And so I remember that. And many years later, I got to work for this same organization that saved our lives. And like you, Craig, did not know what I was doing when I first started, made a lot of mistakes, but also was fortunate enough to meet a lot of other CEOs and other leaders in this field. Many of you in ACB, out there in ACB land, thank you for all the mentorship that you gave me over the years and understanding. And once I had the opportunity to work in this field, I think I'm going to die working because I just love it. And there's still so much work to be done. And it's a great privilege. Happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Lee. And last but not least, Mark Riccobono. So Mark?
Well, you know, I have had a interesting trajectory in my life. I was born blind, diagnosed as blind at age 5 with glaucoma and aniridia. So I lost vision throughout all my school years. I went to the public schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I'm a Wisconsin guy through and through. But I mean, I didn't know I was a blind person. I just knew I couldn't see so well. And I knew it was important to be able to see things. And I really didn't get, especially in my elementary school years, I didn't get any services really to speak of. And I had 2 things against me, I guess. One is that I was just smart enough, not the smartest, but just smart enough to get by. Mm-hmm. And also, I worked my head off. I mean, my parents are both hardworking Midwesterners. They didn't go to college, but they knew how to work hard. And so I knew how to work hard. And so I got by. And I knew that I could just fight my way through, which is what I did. And so I learned to fake it, right? I learned, like so many other blind people, to fake it. I didn't know it was respectable to be blind. And so I just went out and did stuff, and I pretended I could see stuff, and no one ever questioned me. So I was fortunate to get encouraged by a blind mentor that I did get to know in high school, to go to the University of Wisconsin. And I was going to settle for, I won't name which schools, but some other schools. And I was fortunate to get pushed toward the University of Wisconsin, and I got in. And I knew, again, I didn't know I was a blind person. I showed up at orientation with the white cane I was given for graduating high school. I had no idea how to use it, had never received instruction in how to use it, but I showed up at the University of Wisconsin, and I went on my way. Well, after a while, it all caught up with me, and I was fortunate that I started looking around, and I found blind people, so I started bringing blind people together because I needed to know what they did and how they did it. And that sent me on a journey of organizing blind students in the state of Wisconsin, and got me interested in organizing in this field. Now, I went to school to get a business degree. And so when I came out of college, by the way, I was, in those days, I was privileged to win an ACB scholarship. So thank you to ACB for that. I came out of college and I went into the Sears National Executive Trainee Program. I was on the fast track for retail management. I had a degree in marketing and economics. At the same time, I was doing advocacy work for the National Federation of the Blind. I had become president of our Wisconsin affiliate during my senior year in college. And, retail, you work odd hours. And so when I wasn't working in retail management, I was doing advocacy work, which was pretty much what I was doing all of the time. And I got really interested in education. And I got myself appointed to a committee. I was looking at educational reform in the state of Wisconsin. And the state superintendent of public instruction came to me and said, we want you to direct these statewide programs. And I said, you want me to do what? I don't know anything about education. He said, but you have really great ideas and you're pushing us forward. So I was just shy of my 24th birthday. Wow. The highest official in education in the state of Wisconsin said, come run these programs. And I was naive enough to say, sure, I'll do that.
Because you're 24, you can do anything.
That's right. So I guess this speaks to who I am a little bit. So I went to do that, and I didn't have an education background, but I knew I needed to talk to folks, right? So I talked to folks all over the country, educators, blind people, about changing the nature of what we're going to do. I got married shortly after that to my wife, Melissa. We're coming up on our 20th year of being married in 2022. And I just worked hard. I knew that's what you had to do. And I just kind of took on anything that came. We worked on the Touch the Universe book that came out with NASA. I started working on getting blind kids into science because I noticed that a lot of blind kids were being tracked out of science. And in about 2003, I was invited to move to Baltimore to work for the National Federation of the Blind to develop our education programs. And so my wife, Melissa, by the way, my wife is also blind. We moved to Baltimore. And this story will really describe my career since then. I showed up in Baltimore and asked, what was I supposed to do? And the Federation had said that in 2004, we were going to have a science program with NASA for blind kids. And I said, great, what's the plan? And our president at the time said, well, there is no plan. You're supposed to go make the plan. And so that's what I have done all the time. I go talk to blind people. What haven't you done in science? Blind people say, well, we never get to dissect things. So I figured out, how do we dissect things? So if you want a really interesting dissection, I can teach you how to dissect a dogfish shark. I've now done, I don't know, dozens of them. They're pretty disgusting, but if you want to know. So I've really worked on projects in education, but I've also just taken on whatever is needed in the blindness movement, whether it's negotiating intellectual property, going up to the Senate to do something, putting together a protest, but education is really where my heart and soul is. When we think about the pandemic, we got to take our national Braille literacy program that we deliver for 2 weeks in the summer all across the country and do it virtually in people's homes. We had 275 kids. That's really exciting to me. And that's what I've done my whole life. Probably the best thing that I am known for is 10 years ago and 1 month, being the first blind person to drive a vehicle fully independently at the Daytona International Speedway as part of our Blind Driver Challenge. One of the
I'm still jealous of you for that, man.
one of the most interesting days of my life.
And those are high banks over there in Daytona.
They are high banks. I can attest to that. And I just have gotten into all sorts of interesting projects, and the blindness field has helped me do that. Now, so outside of that, and I do live and breathe that because there's just so much awesome things I get to do. And just listening to Craig's story really resonates with me, because I think, man, how did I get here? How did just from when Craig was speaking, all I could think is he's authentic to who he is, and that's what I try to do. And so the important thing that you need to know about me is, besides being married, I have 3 kids. My son Austin's 14. He's going to be an amazing marine biologist someday. He's about to go into high school. And my daughters, Oriana and Elizabeth, they're 10 and 8. They're both blind. And so they have the same eye condition that I have. So we have the interesting prospect now. My wife is a school counselor by training, of not only mentoring and raising our kids, but advocating for them in the public schools. And a lot of people say to me, well, I mean, come on, you're the president of the National Federation of the Blind. The school district must roll over for you. And I'm just here to let you know that is not true. Schools view, well, don't get me into the politics of IEPs, but it's a battle everywhere. But I love being a parent. First and foremost, I mean, my kids have taught me more about life, learning, relationships than anything else. And so these days, especially with COVID, the beautiful thing about COVID is I'm home every day for dinner, with a few exceptions, but that's rare. I haven't been on an airplane since February 4 of last year. So I'm attuning my cooking skills in a great way. I love to grill. I love to cook. I love to hang out with the kids and play games. And I have a lot of pride when they do something like beat me in chess. I never let the kids win. They have to beat me legit. I'm a baseball fan. I pretend to play guitar, but that's not something I put a ton of effort into. But the joy that I have on a daily basis is I get to talk to blind people all over the country. My goal is to talk to more blind people, more educators in the field of blindness on a yearly basis than anybody else. And that really informs what I do, not just in a work sense, but in a day-to-day life hack sense. How do I do X, Y, and Z as a blind person? But just, when you talk to a diversity of people, you learn about, there's so much amazing things you can get to do in the world and experience. And I think that is one of the things about this field and why we need to continue to build the diversity of this field, because it's a great community, and that community can enrich our lives. And that's really why, when I was in college, I thought I'm never going to work in disability stuff. I'm better than that. But, to Craig's point, I can't imagine what I could do that would be better than this on a daily basis. And so I live in Baltimore, 6 blocks from our national headquarters. I've almost always lived, except for 10 years, within walking distance of work. So I got my Fitbit on here. 10,000 steps a day is my goal. So after we're done here, I'm going to get about 1,500 more steps before I go home. So I guess that's me in a nutshell. I'm still a Wisconsin boy at heart. The Wisconsin ethic is in my blood, and it's the way that I think about the world. But Baltimore has become my home after 17 years of living here. I love the Charm City. I love the history. And so I think, for me, it's about people and relationships. And that is why this field is as rich as it is. So I guess that's what I'd say about me.
Well, thanks, Mark. And our ACB Executive Director, Eric Bridges, and his wife, Rebecca, could echo your concerns about the public school system from his point of view in Virginia. So no matter what your status inside the blindness movement, it doesn't necessarily give you any special privileges when you go to talk to school systems. That's for sure. And Orioles or Nationals?
Oh, well, definitely an Orioles guy. Now, I'm a Milwaukee Brewers
are you
fan
a
from
Brewers?
way back, way back. But, the Orioles are in the American League. So Orioles, and I will say Camden Yards, I still think is the most beautiful ballpark of the new era of ballparks.
Revolutionized ballparks.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful place to go.
Yeah. I am going to ask a huge favor of you all. When I asked this question, I had no idea that it would take over an hour to hear your all stories, but they were absolutely spectacular. Is there any way you all could spare another 15 or 20 minutes so we can talk about kind of the future and what things look for moving forward in 2021? I won't keep you too long, but it would really be special if we could go a little bit longer. Is that okay with everybody?
Anything for you, Dan.
It's only 4 o'clock in Hawaii.
So, well, thank you, Chris. Yes, it's not even happy hour out there yet.
I just want to put that out there. Yeah.
So, I believe it was Don or Craig that said something earlier about kind of how quickly technology has moved us forward. I think both of them may have mentioned it. And I heard the CEO of PNC Bank when the pandemic got started. And his talk was about electronic transactions in their banking system. And when the pandemic started in March, 25% of their transactions were done electronically. And they felt like it was going to take a generation, truly 20 or 25 years to evolve to where they were a predominant electronic transaction-based banking system. He said within 3 months, 75% of PNC's transactions are now done electronically and digitally. That's how quick the transition took place. So I do believe this pandemic in many ways is going to be disruptive, and our community is never going to be the same again. So I wanted to get thoughts from you all as we move into 2021. What do you really see as the biggest opportunities as well as challenges for our community? So Don, I'm going to start with you this time with BVA.
Yeah, so I think the greatest opportunity for us, right to your point, is going to be, how do we better leverage the technology that we now have available to us to really and truly connect? And it's unique for an organization such as ours, again, that's going through that multi-generational transition. The old brick and mortar style of putting on a hat and going and meeting at a club somewhere to conduct the order of business of a membership-based organization, it's been dying for years now. We see it with all of our sister organizations, whether it's the Legion, the VFW, organizations across the board. And so our ability to really be able to reach out and connect with individuals is going to drive the organizational transition. So I think just really being able to make sure that folks that might have been out on the periphery before, struggling with the challenges that we all deal with, whether it's transportation or those other approaches. And we're seeing it from our meetings and our conventions. But for us, it requires a comprehensive bylaw amendments, which from a member-driven organization can be extremely complicated. So we've got those challenges for sure, and just being able to transition and make sure that we don't leave anyone behind. It's critically important that we make sure that we carry everyone forward, that we lift everyone along with us through this journey. The most challenging, piece for us right now is going to be, I think, our critical ability to connect not only with our younger active duty service members that are coming back. Vision is still, unfortunately, penetrating ocular injury still at 15% of our military force on the injury side. But with what we're seeing with the traumatic brain injury and the neurocognitive aspects of what's going on with the ocular impacts, to be able to connect with those folks through our Operation Peer Support Program, which is really all about getting out there and creating those mentor opportunities to connect and get out and do the things that our folks have been so successful at, whether it's mountaineering, hiking, kayaking, and doing those types of activities. So, we want to continue to be able to expand those programs to understand that. And so I think from an operational perspective, we're looking at, making these transitions into technology, ensuring that folks have access to the technology. The veteran population, we still have a huge rural and remote population. So even if we equip somebody with the technology, they don't always have the infrastructure in place to be able to drive that. So whether it's sporadic cellular or Wi-Fi connectivity. And so we'll be playing an integral role, hopefully, in making sure that that type of technology continues to evolve, that everybody is connected. So.
Thank you, Don. Kirk, with your research at AFB, what are you guys seeing? What do you think the next 3 to 5 years brings for us?
Yeah, Dan, here's where I think we really see the opportunity. And, we talk about the pandemic in 2020, but something else happened too, and that was Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And the catalyzing the discussions around systemic oppression and built-in barriers that are just not acceptable, and how those systemic barriers and oppression not only impact African-American individuals in our society, Black and Indigenous people of color, but it applies to women in certain structures, and gay and trans people, and disabled people, and blind people. So, we're really excited about the opportunity to engage in the conversations around inclusion and systemic oppression and intersectionality. Blindness cuts across all those demographic categories. How can we use the fact that these conversations are happening to broaden the discussion to include our perspectives? Let's talk about inclusion globally. How do we knock down the barriers and bring everybody into the circle around the campfire? How do we bring everyone's talents and skills and experience to bear on solving the huge problems we face as humankind? And that means thinking about systems, thinking about barriers, thinking about proactively being inclusive. It speaks to, let's not talk about making something accessible. Let's talk about inclusive design to create a barrier-free environment for everybody. So it's really exciting. Our centennial year, I'll say again, afb.org/100, afb.org/100. We're going to have some conversations about these things that'll be available to everyone. Technology, obviously, huge opportunities, but we think the real game changer is to leverage these concepts and be inclusive of people who are blind as our society comes to understand and address these issues.
I couldn't agree more. We are working with David Rubin, the president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And it's been amazing to see how those barriers around disability and vision loss have come down. We're not there yet, but just the fact that the conversation is taking place, that people in power are listening, that didn't listen before, I think is a game changer, but we've got to keep that momentum going. Mark, what are you finding with NFB? What do you see as the opportunities for consumers?
Well, so we've already talked about technology, and that's why our legislative agenda is really all about making sure that accessibility is happening throughout the technology assets that we have in the nation, whether it's voting, whether it's website accessibility, which is a battle that although we've won in some places, we're losing on a daily basis based on the number of websites that are created. So we really need an aggressive strategy in that regard. But the thing is, where we are today, we have some strategic opportunities because of the pandemic, right? So all of these old guard institutions have continued to require wet ink signatures, most notably the Social Security Administration.
Right.
So we saw the pandemic as, okay, this is our opportunity to stop the requirement that you have to physically sign something, even though there are many legitimate ways to verify who you are. Same for voting, right? And we want, and that's where the opportunities are emerging to get electronic submission of voting. 2020 was not the right strategic time for that, but this new election cycle is going to create an opportunity for that. And so these are the kind of things that we have known are things we want to get to, and now it's time to seize those opportunities. There are two other things that I would say. One is education. Again, Craig alluded to this, that the pandemic has forever changed the way work's going to happen. It's also changing the way education's going to happen. And we need to define what that opportunity means for blind people, especially blind kids. And we think that there's a great opportunity to do that now. So the Federation, we've relaunched our Teacher of Tomorrow program to help make sure that the next generation of educators in the blindness field are, I'd say, tech forward in terms of their experience and also deeply rooted in the experience of blind people. But also, the idea of diversity and inclusion, I want to underscore. We're seeking equality in society. And that means as a movement of blind people, we have to be prepared to take on the hard conversations. And from my perspective, we have to be prepared to lead on those issues from our authentic experience as blind people. So diversity and inclusion, sexual assault, other inequalities. These are all difficult areas that don't have easy answers. I think it's up to us as leaders in the field to make sure that we can define these issues and charge forward on them in a way that's authentic to blind people. And that is really going to challenge a lot of the assumptions that we have made, even about what we want in terms of equality in society for blind people. And I think that's incredibly challenging. It's also incredibly inspiring when we can get people together with a commitment to tackle those things. And so I see that as what I have been telling our team leading into 21 is we're leaning into these issues. We're not afraid of these issues. It doesn't mean they're easy, but we're going to lean into them because the only way we're truly going to get to the full integration of the blind into society on terms of equality is to wrestle with those big, nasty societal issues that pervade our communities as well as anybody else's. So I think those where the opportunities are. There's a lot of great work ahead. And the fact that we continue to connect and protect in this environment together, I think is what gives me a lot of optimism about what we can do together.
Great, Mark. And I want to thank NFB, and I know we're with ACB. with Eric and Clark and John and Anil, we all kind of came together and worked on accessible mail-in voting this year in 2020. In several different instances, our state affiliates joined together in lawsuits, and really together, I think it made a really strong impact for mail-in voting. We're not there yet, but I think it just showed that when our organizations work together, what a strong voice we can be. And so I appreciate those efforts, and I've really enjoyed the conversations we've had over the last few months.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
And Lee, with VisionServe Alliance, I have the opportunity to serve on a Lighthouse board in my spare time. And what's really been interesting in that Lighthouse board that has an NIB component, we saw that a call center that had 30 to 40 employees had a contract with the Employment Opportunities Group that handled unemployment insurance for the state of Florida. And now they've gone from 30 seats to 40 seats to 60 seats to 120 seats to now perhaps a contract for 300 seats. They're having a hard time finding blind and visually impaired people that are trained to take these positions in the future. So how have you seen employment impacted by your members inside of VisionServe Alliance?
Oh, yeah. Well, many of the organizations that are affiliated with NIB are experiencing that, Dan. There's tremendous growth opportunities. And I'm not sure how they're going to contend with it. They're growing faster than there are people. So I hope they rise to that occasion. But I think the opportunities for us through our private agencies that are new that I want to capitalize on through VisionServe is, first of all, our member engagement has never been higher. And I think that's because we now meet through Zoom. And while it can be wearing and we all get tired of it, it's actually accessible, and we can do this. We don't have to jump on a plane and wait 3 months to sit down and talk together. We can schedule a meeting next week and have quality conversations about issues that matter. And we're doing that. So I think the opportunity is there for us to truly work on big issues like Mark was talking about together and get some of these things done. The collective opportunities are tremendous. I also think the opportunity is that because we've had this year to think differently, we're a little more comfortable with it. We are thinking outside of the box, and I want to continue to challenge us to do that and look at solving issues like, how the heck are we going to pay for vision rehabilitation services? This is the holy grail for me, that we not rely on bake sales and things like that to pay for life-changing services that only 5% of people who need it are getting right now, especially for people my age, the aging group. Let's make a difference. I believe this next 5 years, we can and will figure that out.
Thank you, Lee. And I want to thank VisionServe Alliance coming out of your conference last fall. You really kind of, I'll say the fall before the pandemic hit, the fall of a year ago, really fall of 19, you really put together a group to concentrate on public policy and have involved many of the policy directors from our different associations here. And I want to thank you for starting that. And I think a lot of productive conversation has come from that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you all for participating. Looking forward to the next few years.
Great. And then we'll kind of end today with Craig and Mark. So Craig, again, back to education and American Printing House for the Blind. Where do you see things going here in the next 3 to 5 years? What has this disruption meant for your association?
Well, three things. So I'll try to hit these points real quick. The first is, I think we all have to come to the realization that there will never be enough fully trained personnel. And that pains me to say that because this is such a wonderful field, but the number of people that are exiting the system due to retirement and age, we cannot keep up with new teachers coming in. The people coming in are wonderful and dedicated, but there's been a shortage for over 40 some years. We've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and assuming it's going to get better. If we just recruit a little harder, we can get more people. There's some truth to that, but I think the reality is we got to settle into this new reality and look at what are the resources. We've just trained up an entire nation on how to learn different, how to grow leadership different, how to create different. I think we need to employ those new skills and find our new do our training. That there's got to be a way. So it would be a waste of all this opportunity if we don't try to pivot and move this in a direction that's going to yield and meet the needs that we have. So there's that whole there's that one piece there. The second piece is, as an agency at APH, the one thing that has been wonderful for us, and that is we cannot rest on laurels. The past is the past.
Yeah.
And you build friendship. I mean, there's a lot of great foundational stuff from that, so we're not ignoring that. But the reality is the days of being able to say, well, we'll catch up with everybody else because we're APH. Those days left us years ago. We adopted a different attitude years ago, but this last 9 months to a year have really just hit that home. And I see a hunger within our own staff from the production floor through the people who are doing outreach, is just this strong demand for moving forward, which is exciting. So we're going to be responding to that as an agency, learning to become more agile and learning how to meet the needs. And a lot of that is, it's getting this balance of both product and service. Right now, APH is probably, well, right now we're getting better. We're probably 70-30, 70% product output, 30% service output. And one of our goals within 3 to 5 years is to balance that out to 50-50. That doesn't mean we're going to cut back on the number of products we're doing, but it's basically meaning we are going to up our game in service and in support. And the biggest way we're going to do that, and this is the final point, is we really believe, as being a fortunate agency that has a steady income coming in, we have a responsibility to the entire field. We are only going to be as successful as we can help everyone else be successful. We have got to partner with everybody in meaningful ways. And sometimes that may be, financial support, but a lot of times it's platform. And if we do this right, there'll be room for, and I'm speaking a lot of cliches, so people, I apologize that, but I want to paint this picture of the idea of the long table and bringing everybody to the table, both who are new to the field and as well as people who've been here a long time, but just letting everybody come in with the gifts they have and really being there together. That's why I appreciate AER. I appreciate VisionServe, and all of you have been wonderful partners. I feel blessed to call you friends, Kirk and Mark and Mark, and and as much as we've gotten good with the virtual, I tell you, once the fourth point, which don't count as a point, but once we're all vaccinated and those numbers come down, it's like we're gonna
have a party.
Boy, I tell you, I'm gonna hug strangers and lick light poles, because I am just ready to be in that elegance company of strangers, and with all of you would be even more sweet just to hang out together. And virtual is great, and I think we need to do as much as we can, but we still need to afford ourselves that opportunity just to be there and in everyone's wonderful company. So looking forward to those days.
And before I send it to Mark to close us out, Lee and Craig, you said something that kind of hit a nerve with me, and that is, lack of resources, lack of funding. And then there's kind of this elephant in the room, which is the occupational therapist and the medical services, and that industry that has 18% of our GDP nationwide right now. do you see a play as we move forward for the medical side of rehabilitation, occupational therapists to play a larger role in providing services to our community?
Yes, but I also see a role at insurers paying for our professionals too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's where that pot of money is. So everyone can get the services that they need, whether it be O&M. I mean, I find that amazing is you got to find a bake sale to pay for canes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Braille or, Braille devices or,
But motorized wheelchairs are paid for by Medicare, But
not hearing aids, and
right.
not canes.
Yep.
And it's ridiculous. That's something that this is one of those great everyone bound, one big voice. I think that's something we can change.
What Mark Riccobono said earlier, there's a huge cry there that we need to be treated equal. And what Kirk was talking about with intersectionality and diversity and inclusion. So.
Yeah, what would the world be like for us if our organizations got to focus the lion's share of their attention on providing quality services to as many people as they could instead of how to pay for it?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, Mark Reichert, I'm going to give you the last word tonight from an educational standpoint. Where do you see us in the next 3 years?
Oh my gosh, my little brain is just on fire after all those last conversations. Oh, it almost hurts. There's so much. I would say a couple of things. This is just going to be a bunch of bullet points because we don't have the time for any of my little far too wordy sermons. The truth is that some of us, and I'm guilty of it, others on this call, frankly, are guilty of it. I think we, in the blindness system historically, for all kinds of historic reasons, or even just because we care about our individual organizations and we want to promote ourselves, we, puff ourselves up. The largest organization of blind men and women in this country is AARP.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they would never say that. Their membership would never identify themselves as being, quote unquote, our people. And that fact makes it a real challenge for the rest of us in terms of being able to say to them, we've got something you need, even though you don't know that we exist. It's a challenge for us internally as we stare into the mirrors of conscience and we say, we're proud to be women and men who, live with vision loss, but these other folk don't see it the same way, literally and figuratively as we do. That's a huge challenge. And that's not just a marketing challenge. That's a public policy challenge. It's a funding challenge. And we don't have the time to talk through all of that. I just put it on the table to say, when we talk about, how are we going to tackle the issues in the years to come, that whole universe of stuff has to be front and center for us if we're going to make any difference there.
You're here.
I don't. If I say that I disagree with Dr. Meador, that probably means he's right and I'm wrong. And I will just say that I'm wrong. I'm wrong, as Dan can attest. Once an hour on the hour. So while I sympathize with the notion that we've talked about personnel shortages for years, I will tell you from just one chubby Lutheran boy's perspective. Okay, we've talked about it a lot. I don't think we've done nearly enough to even begin to address it in anything looking like a serious way. We have jawboned about it to death, but we have not really done the largest thing that the blindness community has done with respect to personnel preparation came out of an effort that's now 20 years old. And it was revolutionary. We've now have the new generation of PhDs in our field, particularly in the special education area, to carry us forward. And God knows, I mean, I love them. They're wonderful. But that's just special education, and it's just at the doctoral level. Just imagine if we could focus that same kind of energy and effort in a number of other areas, not only at the sort of front line, professional level, but well beyond special ed. And oh gosh, let's talk a lot more about that. And I guess the wrap up, Dan, comment I would make would be, I really believe this with all my heart. I think the whole COVID experience of this last year, if nothing else, and this is why, Dan, I love your example, the PNC example that you started this colloquy about. What that shows is that if there is enough of an inferno under your bottom, you can change the world, and you can do it in a time frame that, sitting around in boardrooms, literal or virtual, as you play around with your little strategic plans, and you say, well, let's do it over the next 5 years. You know what? No, maybe we can actually do it in a shorter period of time, a lot shorter. If you really are committed to doing something, maybe you can actually do some things you had no idea you had the capacity to do if you just put your mind and heart into doing it. And the blindness field has done it. Our country's done it. Anyway, I'm going to put the pom-poms down now, but I just say that I think what COVID has shown all of us, I think, is that in our response to it as a country, as a field, is that just because there is some kind of a seemingly wicked problem, and just because we've tried to flirt with it for decades and haven't really moved the needle, is no reason at all for saying, you know what, that was then, this is now. And so let's try to turn the page. All right, I'm going back on mute now. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. And I want to end tonight by just saying something that Craig said earlier. Don't let a good crisis go to waste. And I really, those words resonate with me, because I do not believe that our country changes when things are going good. I think people are open and acceptable to change when things are not going so good. And this crisis, as Kirk said earlier, has really lifted awareness of diversity and inclusion. And I think we miss the moment as a blind and visually impaired community if we don't rise to that challenge. So I thank you all so much for your participation tonight. So Craig, Kurt, Don, Mark, Lee, and Mark, thank you all so much from the American Council of the Blind. Thank you for participating in our first ever Fireside Chat. I hope this becomes an annual event, and thank you all for being the wonderful supporters you are of our blind and visually impaired community.
Well, thank you for your leadership, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening, and aloha, Kirk. Good night, everybody.
Night.